All right, farmers. Um, Particularly nice to see some new names here. I don't know if that's that people are changing their names or we have more participation, but from where I sit, it feels like the very beginnings of a beautiful community. I feel like one of the lessons we've been learning the hard way is we cannot run away from the community and from the governance. And as much as the Beanstalk experience was quite traumatic, and indeed it was traumatic, where it's like we thought we were solving an economics problem, which remains to be seen if it's solvable, although at this point we have a strong conviction that it is. But we did not realize we were solving a governance problem as well. And that obviously manifested in the Beanstalk exploit, which was a governance exploit. But from where I sit, it feels like we have had to learn that lesson again with Pinto, whereby we, and I'm using the royal we here for contributors, and not to speak on behalf of everyone, but as a group, we ultimately decided not to inform the Beanstalk community about Pinto for a while. And that was sort of us running away from the community and running away from the hard work that had to be done, that has to still be done in order to reconcile what has happened, which is deeply traumatic, and a failed attempt at healing the system after its trauma, with a good faith effort to move this thing forward and to keep the experiment going. And so last week, I guess you could say it started last Friday, 2 Fridays ago, with that initial call in the Beanstalk Discord. But last week was really the first week where we were, I don't even think you could say we're at full steam, but we were back in the saddle, just doing the hard work to build a community. And the community was obviously, at least for me, it was obviously the backbone of a lot of the success that Beanstalk experienced. And even after the exploit, the fact that the protocol was able to borrow an additional $17 million from the market is deeply indicative of how powerful a community was there. And I think, just to share for me personally, to see how the community became so negative, and a lot of it was directed towards me personally, which exacerbated the pain. But just to even see how the community really, that this was so traumatic. My reaction personally was to run away, basically. Like, who wants to deal with this? We tried our best for a while, and we did try our best for a while. We really did try our best. But eventually it was like, fuck this. I can't deal with this anymore. These people hate me, and I've tried to resolve it. And, where I think we really went wrong was trying to thread the needle. Like, the way that Pinto has been set up is in practice. I think in the Beanstalk call, either last week or 2 weeks ago, people were confused about whether the current setup is what I view to be the right setup. And that type of dissonance and confusion is tremendously unhealthy. And so a big part of what I'm hoping to do by just coming here and speaking basically extemporaneously off the dome is to try to share what's been going on and what's been going on in my head in particular, in addition to some of the decisions that have been made by the contributors as a collective. But I think my experience is quite important in the grand scheme of things, where, I was pretty deeply involved in maybe as deep a way as possible in the formation of the Beanstalk community. And to have it turn into something that was so ugly and negative after I'd sort of put my heart and soul into it just left me so, I mean, sad doesn't even cover it. It was really heartbreaking. And the natural response, which I fully grant, in hindsight, not a very mature response, far from the optimal response, was to just move on, but still try to move on in a way that honored Beanstalk and honored the community. But I did not, personally want to engage again, and had a belief, which at this point I think quite clearly is, was totally wrong, that there was a path forward here that did not include the Beanstalk community. And I mean, maybe you could make a nuanced argument like that's still possible, or it was possible, but it didn't play out. But at this point, I feel the evidence is quite clear. Like, there were hundreds or potentially low thousands of people that were deeply convicted about the potential for Beanstalk, and to not include them actively in the Pinto movement is a total L and a total betrayal to the spirit of transparency and innovating out in the open that I think really made Beanstalk so special and something really unique in the DeFi space and in the cryptocurrency space in general. So, last week was really the beginning of our attempt to right this issue and to just start speaking openly about what's going on and what we perceive to be good and bad and our thoughts on things. Obviously, the current administration makes it a little bit easier to voice what we think and what we feel and what we're working on than when we were working on Beanstalk. I think this is maybe an underappreciated advantage we have now. Whereas pre-exploit, when we were anon, and there was sort of a very natural and obvious deal, which was that Publius was going to disappear at some point, I think really empowered us to speak much more freely and opinionatedly about the system than after the exploit, when we were doxxed and everything that was being said in our personal capacity. And at this point, I do feel, I tweeted like unmuzzled a while back in reference to the new political regime we're in. And I think, me personally and us as a group need to do a better job of seizing this opportunity and really pushing this thing in a way that is rigorous and honest and transparent. But pushing it out to the public and sharing, like, we think this is the most important experiment happening in crypto right now. And we think it's a shame that more people aren't paying attention. And at the same time, it doesn't really feel like right now, the community itself and money is a social phenomenon. And so it feels like if we're really putting forward that this is a monetary experiment, that we need a strong social system underneath it, underlying it. And this kind of gets back to the governance thing. Like, at the end of the day, a lot of this is a governance issue. Even if the protocol itself has no governance, this is still a governance and an organization, a social organization issue. From where I sit at this point, it's a little hard to go out there and not to say that I'm not tweeting about it, not to say that I'm not going to, like, I was at Stable Summit a while back, a couple weeks ago, with some of the other contributors. not to say that we're not trying to shout it from the rooftops, but in many ways feel like the lack of clearing the air, to the extent possible at least, with the existing community and the reestablishment within the Discord of a really enjoyable space for people to come spend time in and hang out, has really, I think it will continue to have at the margin, a tremendously negative effect on this project and this experiment. And I am deeply, at a personal level, I am deeply committed to doing what I can to right the ship, but recognize that a lot of faith has been lost and a lot of trust has been lost, and in many ways, rightfully so. And that's really painful for me to say, given how much blood, sweat, and tears I've put into this thing, to acknowledge that my conduct and decision making has had a really negative and adverse effect on the success of the project. But I'm trying my best, and that's not an excuse. That's just an acknowledgement that what more can I do? And my commitment is to continue to get better and to continue to improve myself such that I can do a better job of being a leader in this community. And when we were 24 and had to, got doxxed, had to dox ourselves, I really was not personally in a position to serve that role in this community and to be a leader with no end in sight. It was one thing to sign up for being the voice of Publius and speaking twice or 3 times or 4 times a week with the expectation that at some point I could opt out, like the thing would be well on its way and Publius could sort of fade into the history books, if you will. I really was not prepared for the long haul. And I think that's just the reality. And you could, try to judge it and say, well, it's really unfortunate and it's too bad you weren't ready and it's too bad that you ran away from the community and weren't able to just square up with the people. But that's just the reality. And I hope that I'm better off for this entire experience and for having gone through the trauma and the doxing and the replant and then sort of falling out of love with the work because it was too painful and there was too much negativity and it was moving too slowly and it didn't all make sense anymore. But where I sit today, it's hard not to be glass half full. It's hard not to be optimistic. At the time of the exploit, there were like 50 people working on Beanstalk, and it was a shit show because we didn't have any governance. And our attitude was anyone that wanted to contribute could come contribute. And it was a mess. And Brendan, Mikey, and I spent basically our whole lives on calls that were pretty dysfunctional. And when the exploit happened, almost everyone left because there was no money anymore. And the people that stuck around, in many ways, were the true believers. A dozen or so core contributors to Pinto that saw the vision and, despite all the hardship that the protocol faced, bought in and doubled down. And those people have spent the past 2.5, almost 3 years now, slogging through the mud, complex upgrade after upgrade, with nothing but negativity thrown in their direction for years, it felt like. And the core, that core, to me, feels like a much stronger and reliable base off of which a currency can grow in this day and age with the complexity that is required to implement a complement to Bitcoin. It feels like from a contributor perspective, things have never been in a better spot. And in part as a result of these amazing contributors that have sacrificed a tremendous amount to continue to work on this project, the level of sophistication and the level of complexity of the protocol has improved dramatically. And in some sense, the rate of innovation, because there's been such a well-built architecture put in place and so many base mechanisms in place, that now there is the opportunity to really fine-tune and tweak in minor ways the current system. I think a great example of this is the convert penalty. Like, there's never been a convert penalty, but all the infrastructure was there and is there, such that now the marginal work to change the penalty from 0 to as a result of some function, that's pretty easy work. That's pretty low-hanging fruit. And so where I see things at the moment is there is still a hole in our community. And I am doing my part, or my best effort to do my part, to fix the hole. But to be honest, I don't think at this point it's very realistic to expect me to be able to do it alone. So I am ready, willing, and able to come up here 2, 3, 4, 5 times a week and talk about what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling and what I believe to be the right things to do given the information that we currently have. And I intend to. But I also want to explicitly say, like, from where I sit, it's not going to be something I can do as the sole captain of the ship this time around. That the allure of Publius has been replaced by, a 27-year-old that is figuring it out. And to the extent that people are able to join the conversation and respond to people in the Discord, and when there's an open mic here, come and ask questions, even if it's not the most coherent or the most sophisticated question. Like, just come and share your perspective. The attitude I always had in school about asking questions, people are embarrassed to ask questions, is if it was on my mind, then surely it must be on someone else's mind. And I think that's a really helpful mindset for our community to have as we try to recreate and maybe create a new type of magic, but also recreate the magic that was the Beanstalk community before the exploit. And even after the exploit, up until the replant, where there really was so much beauty and curiosity and belief that this was a worthwhile experiment. And I stand here today believing more than ever that this is a worthwhile experiment, and more optimistic than ever because of the quality of the people working on this experiment. Like, it's grown from 3 of us who were, at the time we started, like 23-year-old kids, basically, to now, like, I think in aggregate, it's like 15 or something. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less, but 15 or so contributors that are a lot more experienced than, Brendan, Mikey, and I were back in the day. So this is where we stand, or at least where I believe that we stand, where I perceive us to stand. we're still figuring out exactly what to do with these town halls. I think the general format that we're going for is for myself to have an opportunity to address the community insofar as there are things to say, and to open up the floor to see if there's things other people want to say or if people have questions. And I'm here to answer questions. I think a lot of the other contributors are also participating in these calls to answer questions. And so, with this as sort of a perhaps a bit lengthy for an opening monologue, but personally, I feel important for me to share my experience. And I'll probably share this experience again and again as we work to rebuild this community. But I felt it was important to just share, like, on the one hand, I'm super optimistic. On another hand, I'm still sad. Like, it really still hurts. The exploit still hurts. The hate from the trolls still hurts. And at the same time, I feel like we have a tremendous, beautiful, exciting opportunity before us. And I hope to be an active participant in that beautiful thing. So with that, I think I'm going to open up the floor. I don't know if people have things that they want to comment in response to it. But before we open it up for questions about the system in general, I would maybe ask that we give a minute for people to either ask questions about what I just said or respond to it. And then after it feels like we've gotten through any questions or responses, then maybe we can move on to more general questions about what's going on.
You guys, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben, for sharing your feelings about after the exploit and how, you still hurt to this day. I mean, for me, I joined Beanstalk after the exploit because I thought the idea was so amazing. And, it's quite funny because I didn't join. I don't think I started working on Beanstalk prior to the exploit. I think I was still just a market participant. And, after the exploit, I remember that, yeah, there was no guarantee of success or nothing, but the idea was so captivating for me that I still wanted to work on the protocol. And I think I was like 22 around that time too. I think about a year younger than you. And I was young. I didn't have a lot of experience, but I remember talking to Anonymous Publius at the time. And, he was telling me what would it take to help or to contribute to Pinto or Beanstalk in a full-time capacity. I told him a lot. I mean, I didn't have any experience to code and backend, and I'll never forget at the time, Publius Brendan, he said, "Well, is there anything you're interested in? I'll be happy to teach you all I know." And for me, began this 2-year journey as a developer, growing from zero, learning about the protocol, its inner workings, to where I am today, where I, lead most of the engineering efforts. And as I reflect, from replan to reseed into the deployment of Pinto, it was hard. We would upgrade stuff, we would work on stuff, we would put our heart, blood, and sweat and tears on everything, and to get berated by the community and to get anger, it made me very sad, honestly. But like still, my faith in the idea of how this could, this can work and how it could help us usher into a better future, kept me wanting to work on this protocol. And as I reflect personally on how I want to reconnect with the community, one of my friends was talking to me a couple of days ago and telling me, and I was, just re-explaining my experience. And through that conversation, I kind of realized, yeah, I think I'm still have some resentment or some fear in working in that being open and vulnerable to critique, really did a number on me personally. So I don't think I'm perfect to any degree, and I don't think, obviously, on reflection, I think as a community, as our group, we've realized that community is very important. I just wanted to kind of put my perspective on why, when we're discussing whether or not to share this Pinto with, everybody, or, why did we do it the way we did? Wanted to put my perspective on why I chose, or, just for context, I said that we shouldn't tell the Pinto community, or no, sorry, the original Beanstalk community, out of fear that hatred would come back to haunt the group, and I guess to some point me. Yeah, but it's so sad because I love the project so much, and to have that source of hatred come towards me, it was quite paradoxical to me for a long time. Mm. But as I see contributors or just people here, and they express their like joy for Pinto. Like I think Breezy had a couple, I think yesterday, said his statement about how he loves Pinto. It's so magical. It's so exciting. So these are the kind of things that keeps me doing the things that I do, and pushes me to work as hard and as passionate as I do to get this protocol into a better state every day. It's come far from the recent migration, but there's still so much to do. So always, super excited, always excited to keep going every day. Like I wake up and, I mean, to be honest, some days when I wake up prior to the replant, it was bad. It was pretty bad, to be honest. I was like, holy shit. Why am I working on this when everyone's berating me? But then some days I wake up and, I think, wow, I'm so lucky to be working on something I care about and something that I think can help the future. And fortunately, we have more of those days than the latter, and then the former.
Wow. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for sticking around, without people like you, man, this doesn't go anywhere. So yeah, I think it's been, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, as they say.
Thank you for, I don't know, I felt like there was something here that, it was hard to leave. So indeed, good at times, bad times, it all was worth it at the end.
It's amazing you feel that way even now when we still haven't gotten the payoff, both literal and metaphorical, for all the work that's gone on over the past 3 years. So yeah, that's what a beautiful way to feel. And I feel similarly, like I obviously wish Beanstalk were a peg and we never would have had to fork it. And I also wish that Pinto would have already experienced its first major growth cycle and debt repayment. But I think at the end of the day, you got to love the process. And I mean, it's definitely been painful. It took a little cajoling to get me to commit to doing this all the time again, no doubt. But where we sit currently, a la what I was saying before about having all this opportunity before us and it being a beautiful one, it does feel great. I'm very grateful for the past 4.5 years of working on this thing, and all the lessons I've learned doing it, and at the same time feel like I'm going to keep fucking up. I'm going to keep making mistakes. But I'm optimistic that it will all be towards the achievement of our ends, our collective ends, which is to create a new currency. The best currency.
One thing for me is, I think it's taken us a while to get to the point where we realize that speaking openly, honestly, and being transparent was one of the things that allowed the Beanstalk community to thrive. And, when the Beanstalk exploit occurred, I think, we started to shut ourselves in a little bit and stop building out in the open as much in pursuit of finding a more efficient way to develop. The Beanstalk exploit obviously taught us a lot about security. And as a result of that, Beanstalk's process and speed of innovation slowed down dramatically. And, things took a long time to release. And, it took us a while to get the correct processes in place to learn how to be secure while also shipping at an efficient cadence. And, it does feel like people lost patience with that effort. And the disdain in the community led us to build less in the open, thinking that the increase of efficiency of the system due to us being able to spend more time focused on innovation and pushing new features would lead to more and better protocol success in the long run. It's taking us a long time to push updates, and there was a lot of when in the Discord. And to me, that was like a signal that, we shouldn't be doing as much talking about the thing. We should be spending more time building it. And, ultimately, I personally have come to realize that wasn't the right thing to do. And, it's actually the transparentness and openness of the Beanstalk community is one of the things that ultimately made it so special. And now to be able to, go back to that strategy of being able to speak open as frequently as possible in the public forum, it feels great, honestly, to hear Ben speaking and to hear other people and community members and contributors all speak up and talking again. Like, it feels like that magic of Beanstalk is back a little bit, where, we are trying to build a community again. And, the vibe seems to be shifting and tide seems to be shifting. And it's really exciting time. So, one thing I just want to say is, for those who have been around for a while and, tried to bear with us as much as you can, appreciate your patience with us, trying to figure out the best way to operate, develop, and innovate efficiently, while also putting the required time, effort, and energy into fostering an open, positive, and productive community. So thank all you guys who have had the patience to still be here.
Hearing you speak, I think for me, the thing to highlight, which you mentioned, is that it's taken us a while to find our identity again. And that identity is actually rooted in open innovation, like just innovating out in the open and having discussions out in the open. And it's like before, when we were still Publius, it was you, me, and Mikey would have a conversation But then everything else, every other conversation that happened took place out in the open, basically. And, you know, one of the like wisest things that's ever been said to me is that you need integration at the ego level. Like, who are you? What are you doing? What is your mission? The community level. What is the community doing? And who are you within the community? And then the unity level, like in the context of everything. What is your community doing and what are you doing and how are they all integrated? And this was wisdom that was shared with me after the exploit. And it opened my eyes to the fact that prior to the exploit, there was a tremendous integration, a tremendously strong integration at all three levels. Like, who were we? The Publius, it was super clear who Publius was. And it was super clear what Publius was doing. And who was the Beanstalk community? Also super clear. What was Publius's role in the Beanstalk community? Also super clear. What were we as a community doing in the grand scheme of things? Also super clear. And it feels like, from where we sit today, that those words couldn't be truer. That largely the success of the protocol came from that integration. And if you juxtapose that with the state of this integration after the exploit, it's like, well, we doxed ourselves, and underneath Publius, which was held in the highest regard by almost everyone in the community, were these three knuckleheads that clearly did not know what they were doing. That sent everything into chaos. Like, who were we in relation to Publius? That was super awkward and uncomfortable. Where it was like, I was still talking, but I was talking on behalf of Publius, but it was me talking now. And that was totally incoherent. And there was no clarity there, leading us to eventually retire Publius altogether. Who was the community? Well, the community, it was also unclear what we were doing there at that point. Like, it was the long haul. The community was able to rally and unite for a replant, which was quite exciting and momentous. But as soon as it became clear this was the long haul and wasn't something that was going to work or not work within a couple of months, which was the case with Beanstalk before the exploit and arguably the expectation after the exploit, once that became clear that this was a totally different time horizon and a different scope of a project, it was even unclear who the community, what the community's goals were and who the community was in this context. And particularly, you know, while there might have been still some clarity or understanding about what the mission was to create this currency in the unity of the grand scheme of things, at every layer below that, it was confusion and incoherence. And the result, and I appreciate very much, Brendan, you talking about the logic, like what led us to conclude that we were better off, you know, innovating in private, that we've learned the hard way just how foolish that perspective is. And that in reality, the way to succeed is to reintegrate, to reestablish who are we, who am I in this context. And part of my sharing my experience and my pain and my difficulty is to try to come in an honest and transparent fashion. Who am I? What am I doing here? Why am I putting in all this work on something? Is it just to cash out and dump on everyone, as is often accused of me? Or am I someone that really cares and really believes in the need and the potential for a protocol like Pinto, for a Leviathan-free low volatility money? Like, what am I doing here? What are you still doing here, Brendan? Like, we've been working at this for 5 years. Why are we still here? I think it's really important that us, in addition to the contributors, these Why Pinto articles that have started to go out, I think are really profound and paint a picture about what are these crazy people doing? Why are they working on this? And I hope that combined with spaces like this, and I'm using space metaphorically here. Please don't sue me, Elon. Spaces like this will serve as a platform on which we can plant a new foundation or set new foundation. And I hope that, really grateful to Frio for speaking up and sharing their perspective and being vulnerable. And I want to encourage more contributors to do the same and to do it continuously in the hopes that this will allow for a reintegration of who am I? Who are we? And what is our community? What are we doing here? What is our mission? Why are we doing this? So, yeah, this is going to be the long haul, folks. It may take months for Pinto to go through another growth cycle. I'm optimistic it's not going to take 6 months, but it may take another 3-6 months to actually get the market to take a look at this thing. And we're probably going to have to spend time much closer to peg than we have been over the past couple weeks in order to make that happen. And we're going to have to get the convert incentives right, or if not right, much better and fine-tuned than they have been to date in order to make that happen. But at the same time, it does feel like all the ingredients for success are there and the architecture is ready for these minute parameter changes to just fine-tune the thing to hopefully get it to start to work for real. But I don't think that without having these very difficult and emotional conversations about where we're at and why we are where we are, that anyone should hop back on the bandwagon. And I don't blame you for a second. So here we are doing our best to re-engage and to do it with transparency and humility and belief and faith that this is going to be work that in the grand scheme of things is worth it. Even if the project doesn't work, maybe getting the information that this isn't possible, like that would be worth it too. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're much more likely to have to continuously innovate for the next half decade or so, at least, in order to get this thing to a place where it like really does just run itself in an optimal fashion. But it feels totally doable if we can just get back on the right foot and get back on solid ground. So very grateful to you for sharing a bit of your perspective as well, Brendan. We'll just leave the floor open for another 30 seconds or so to see if anyone else is compelled to speak on this particular topic, and then we'll open up for some other questions or comments.
I mean, one maybe thing I'd like to add, particular with like the dissolving of Publius, is, I personally felt like as Publius, it was, quite hard to make a mistake and admit a mistake given kind of Publius's orientation to the community. And I feel like, that in general helped contribute, at least with respect to me, to, less openness and honesty. And, one thing I'm really excited for when it comes to like how the community can operate going forward in a more open and transparent setting is just having the Pinto community be more honest than ever, in a sense that it's like, now when I speak, I'm no longer speaking from Publius, I'm speaking as Brendan, and my voice represents myself, and I can have different perspectives than Ben, and our perspectives can be, we can debate each other in a public forum, and we can have separate voices, which I think leads in general the level of discourse in the community to be much more strong and deep and allows us to be more connected. One thing that's really been inspiring to me is, with kind of starting to put in place the Pinto roadmap, like for the first time, having so many people in the same room, all contributing to the same idea. Like by just putting more brain power to this problem beyond the brain power that we had as Publius, we were able to determine significantly greater efficiencies and improvements to the model that it would have taken far longer to realize it's just Publius. And, it's quite amazing to me at this point that there are so many people that understand the system at that level of depth and are willing to improve it. And I see that as a sign that, that Pinto has the potential to, be orders of magnitude more efficient than Beanstalk and be something greater than Beanstalk had the potential to be under the control of Publius, which I'm personally really excited for. And I'm really excited to develop a deeper relationship with the community and everyone in it and be able to speak freely from my own personal perspective. And, I think after Publius was dissolved, it was a hard dynamic to figure out how to orient, myself in relation to that. And, I feel like now, having another shot at an open and transparent, community with so much conversation having in the public Discord, I'm really excited for the opportunity to be able to speak my mind as myself in this forum.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I think was quite a tragedy of the Publius brand was that there wasn't a lot of room for you to speak. And, I've had the great pleasure and fortune of working incredibly closely with you for, going on 5 years now. But I think, yeah, that dynamic where, people know the voice of Publius, and you obviously spoke a bit, but it was very high pressure. Like we both felt such a pressure to speak perfectly and to not misspeak about anything led us to ultimately not be able to engage in the most open fashion. And I think one of the things that I foresee is the community will benefit tremendously from you being able to speak as yourself, Brendan, and us not being, tied down to this Publius identity and all of the perfection that we, tried so hard to maintain for those 9 months. Yeah, I think that's really, we haven't really spoken about that, amongst ourselves, but I think you're totally right. That's a big, big, big unlock. And I'm excited to engage with you and debate you in public and to share a bit with the world, like what's going on in our brains and how have we been able to work together to create stuff so cool, or at least what is in our humble opinion so cool. Rothbard Pinto, I see you unmuted. Was that intentional? Oh, I see you muted again. All right, we have 5 minutes left, 4 minutes left in the hour. We can obviously run a little bit over, but a la what we said in one of the more recent ones, hoping to keep these to around 60 minutes. Maybe they can go to 90 minutes if the conversation's really going, but don't want to make them too long, so people feel like they can follow everything and catch up, and don't want to, put out 3-hour podcasts every day that people have a full-time job to catch up to. So with that said, I'm going to leave like another 30-second window to see if, Pinto Noir, what's up, man? I don't know if you intentionally unmuted yourself. Feel free to speak up if so. Well, I was just saying that I'm going to leave another 30 seconds or so to allow anyone to, comment or opine about what we've been talking about. And then maybe open up the floor for just a quick question or two if anyone has something pretty low-hanging fruit to address. Going once. Going twice. Great. Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Frio. Really grateful that you guys share as well. All right. Does anyone have any questions, more general questions or comments more generally for the town hall?
When one Billy.
Soon. I didn't see who said that, but soon. Not soon enough. But I'm cautiously optimistic, personally. Just want to wrap up by saying that tomorrow, Nugget here, tomorrow should be a good day for the protocol. One of the cool things about having such a kick-ass team, a large kick-ass team that is well organized and firing on all cylinders, is our ability to not just innovate on the protocol, but with integrations is really exciting. So I believe tomorrow there will be another integration of Pinto announced, which is for those that have been here for the long haul know how hard getting integrations done has been historically. Tomorrow is an important day, so stay tuned. All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you for your time. Thank you again to Brendan and Frio for sharing. And I don't think we have anything scheduled tomorrow, but there's a Beanstalk Town Hall, 1:30 Eastern in the Beanstalk Discord on Thursday. And then we'll have a State of the Game call in the Pinto Discord, 3:30 Eastern on Friday. So talk to everyone soon. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Ben.